The day that shattered everything I thought I knew about safety, love, and trust wasn't a storm or an accident, it was a neighbor. A woman who turned cruelty into action and left scars on my daughter's heart that may never fully heal. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also, like and subscribe for more stories. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how a single act of violence against my daughter's therapy dog became the darkest chapter of our lives. My daughter Emma was just 8 years old when it happened. She is different from other kids, born with challenges that make everyday tasks harder, but her heart is pure gold. And the one constant source of comfort in her world was Buddy, our golden retriever. That morning began like any other sunlight, spilling through the curtains, Emma laughing softly as Buddy wagged his tail beside her bed. I thought it would be just another simple day. I never imagined it would end with screams, blood, and my little girl fainting in my arms while our dog lay broken at our feet. Life in Maplewood Grove always seemed picture perfect at first glance. Tree-lined streets, trimmed hedges, children playing hopscotch on the sidewalks. It was the kind of place people dreamed of raising their families. When we first moved in, I felt a sense of relief, believing I had finally found the safe haven my daughter, Emma, truly needed. Emma wasn't like other children. She was born with developmental delays, which meant her mind processed the world differently. Things that came naturally to other kids: reading a simple sentence, tying her shoelaces were steep mountains for her to climb, but what she lacked in speed, she made up for in kindness. Emma radiated a joy so genuine that people couldn't help but smile when they spoke to her. And then there was Buddy. He wasn't just a pet. He was Emma's anchor, a golden retriever with the gentlest soul. He seemed to understand her in ways even I sometimes couldn't. When Emma had meltdowns or got overwhelmed, Buddy would press his warm body against her, grounding her until the storm inside her passed. He was her therapy dog, her best friend, her guardian angel. Neighbors noticed the bond between them. Kids from the block would wave at Buddy, and parents often said, "That's the best trained dog I've ever seen." Emma would beam proudly, as if Buddy's goodness was a reflection of her own. It gave her confidence, a rare feeling for a child who was often reminded of how different she was. Most of the community embraced us. Mrs. Patterson next door always slipped Buddy a treat when we passed. Mr. Johnson from across the street once said, "Emma and Buddy were the heart of the neighborhood." For a while, I thought we had finally found a home where acceptance lived. But peace never lasts when someone determined to control others moves in. And in our case, that person was Margaret Wheeler, the new neighbor who believed rules mattered more than kindness, appearances mattered more than compassion, and that dogs like Buddy had no place in her version of perfection. Margaret Wheeler, or as everyone eventually began to call her, Karen, was unlike any neighbor I'd ever had. Tall, thin, with sharp eyes that seemed to dissect everything, and everyone she looked at. She carried herself like she owned not just her property, but the entire street. Even her walk screamed superiority, every step clipped and precise, as if she was marching into battle rather than strolling through a neighborhood. She arrived in Maplewood Grove with polished cars, manicured hedges, and an attitude that made people uncomfortable. Within weeks, she had inserted herself into every conversation about the community and somehow got herself elected as president of the Homeowners Association. From that moment, she treated the neighborhood as her personal kingdom. The rules started: small garbage cans had to be hidden by a certain time, lawns trimmed exactly to her liking, no toys left in the yard overnight. Most neighbors grumbled, but complied. But it became obvious quickly. Karen's real issue wasn't trash cans or toys. It was dogs. HOA meetings. Her disdain poured out like venom. "This neighborhood is going downhill because of animals," she would snap. "They're loud, dirty, dangerous. Property values are already suffering." She said it like she was protecting us, but her eyes always locked on Buddy when she spoke. At first, I tried to avoid her, but she lived just 3 houses down. Every morning, when Emma and I walked Buddy, we'd see her peering from her window, lips pursed in disgust. Sometimes she'd step outside just to glare, arms crossed, muttering about irresponsible pet owners. One afternoon, as Emma and Buddy played fetch in the park, Karen approached me, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Do you really think it's safe letting that animal around children? Dogs can snap, you know." I forced a polite smile, though my stomach churned. Buddy's a certified therapy dog. He's trained to protect, not harm. Her smile vanished. "We'll see," she said coldly, before walking away. It wasn't just a warning, it was a promise. And I knew, deep down, that Karen's obsession with control wasn't going to stop at words. She was preparing to target the one being who meant the most to my daughter. It was a crisp Tuesday morning in late September. The kind of day where the sky stretched bright and blue, and the leaves hinted at turning shades of gold. Emma had been struggling at school that week. Reading was harder than usual, and a couple of classmates had teased her during lunch. But the moment she walked through our front door that afternoon, Buddy bounded over, tail wagging furiously, as if he had been waiting all day just for her. Emma's face lit up in the way only Buddy could make happen. "Mama, can we take Buddy to the park?" she asked, her words slow but hopeful. "He wants to play fetch." I looked at her eager face, at Buddy practically bouncing with excitement, and I couldn't say no. I packed a water bottle, a tennis ball, and some snacks. Emma grabbed Buddy's leash with both hands, her expression serious and proud. To her, holding that leash wasn't just walking a dog, it was responsibility. It was friendship. It was love. We walked down the sidewalk hand in hand, Buddy trotting happily beside Emma. It felt peaceful, almost perfect until we passed Margaret Wheeler's house. The front door slammed open so hard it rattled against the wall. Margaret stormed out, her heels clicking sharply against the stone walkway. Her face was flushed red, eyes blazing with fury. She pointed at us as though we were criminals caught in the act. "Stop right there," she barked. Emma froze, her body tense, eyes wide with fear. She clutched Buddy's leash tighter, pressing closer to me. Buddy sensed her unease instantly, stepping forward in front of her protectively. Tail low but steady. "What's wrong, Mrs. Wheeler?" I asked cautiously, trying to keep my voice calm for Emma's sake. Margaret's voice cut through the quiet. "Street, that beast of yours relieved itself on my lawn yesterday. I saw it. This is completely unacceptable." I blinked, startled. I always carried bags, always cleaned up after Buddy. Maybe I had missed something, though I couldn't imagine it. "I'm sorry if that happened," I said evenly. "I always try to clean up, but if I missed, she snapped, her voice rising to a scream. "You didn't miss anything. You deliberately let that filthy animal destroy my property. I've spent thousands of dollars on that lawn." Emma whimpered, the noise too loud, too angry for her sensitive heart. Tears welled in her eyes. "Please," I said firmly. "You're scaring my daughter." For a fleeting second, I thought I saw hesitation in Margaret's face, but it vanished instantly, replaced with cold rage. She took a step closer, her words like ice. "Your daughter needs to learn actions have consequences. And so do you." Then, in a move so sudden, I barely had time to react. Margaret lunged forward and grabbed Buddy's leash, yanking hard. Emma screamed, "No, Buddy is mine." But Margaret was stronger than an 8-year-old. Emma stumbled forward, trying desperately to hold on. Buddy barked not in aggression, but in confusion, torn between protecting Emma and obeying her small hands on the leash. Margaret's eyes gleamed with twisted triumph. "See? Aggressive," she shouted. And in that moment, everything spiraled out of control. Margaret's hand shot upward, and before I could even move, she swung her heavy leather purse straight down onto Buddy's head. The sound was sickening, a dull, hollow thud that echoed down the quiet street. Buddy yelped in shock and pain, his body jerking back as if he couldn't comprehend why he was being hurt. Emma's scream pierced the air, high and raw. "Stop, don't hurt him," she cried, tugging desperately at the leash, still tangled between her small hands in Margaret's grasp. But Margaret wasn't finished. Her face twisted into something almost unrecognizable, rage, disgust, and something disturbingly close to satisfaction. She lifted the purse again and brought it down harder, striking Buddy's back. He staggered, whimpering, his golden fur rippling under the blow. "See?" Margaret shouted. "This animal is dangerous, out of control." "No, he's not," Emma sobbed. "He's a good boy." I lunged forward, trying to pull Margaret away, but she jerked back violently, swinging her purse once more. This time the blow landed across Buddy's face. I heard the horrifying crack like bones splintering. Blood burst from his nose, staining the sidewalk bright red. Emma's cries grew frantic. She tried to break free from my arms, pounding her fists against my chest in desperation. "Buddy, Buddy, I'll save you." I held her tight, terrified of what Margaret might do next if Emma got close. My little girl's terror was unbearable, her body trembling, her voice breaking into incoherent sobs. Margaret raised her foot and kicked Buddy hard in the ribs. He collapsed onto his side, wheezing, his eyes wide with confusion and hurt. Even then, even as his body shuddered from pain, he tried to crawl toward Emma. That was when Emma's screams suddenly stopped. Her body stiffened in my arms, her eyes rolled back, and then she went completely limp. "Emma!" I screamed, dropping to my knees to keep her from hitting the ground. My heart felt like it was splitting in two. My daughter was unconscious, her face pale as snow, while her best friend lay bleeding only feet away. "Look what you've done!" I shrieked at Margaret, my voice raw, fury coursing through me like fire. For the first time, she faltered, her face drained of color, the purse still dangling from her hand, its corner smeared with Buddy's blood. "I didn't mean," she stammered, but her words sounded hollow. At that moment, something in me snapped. I carefully laid Emma on the grass, shielding her with my body, and rose to my feet. My voice dropped to a deadly calm. "If you ever touch my daughter or my dog again," I said, staring directly into her eyes, "I will make you regret the day you were born." Margaret's arrogance cracked. She backed away, her bravado faltering under the weight of my rage. Neighbors' doors were swinging open, voices rising as people rushed out. Witnesses had seen enough. and for the first time, Margaret realized she was no longer in control. Within moments, the quiet street erupted with voices. Doors slammed, footsteps pounded across driveways, and neighbors rushed toward us. Mrs. Patterson from next door hurried over first, clutching a wet towel in her hands. She knelt beside Emma, gently pressing the cloth to her face. "She's breathing. Sarah, she's going to be all right," she whispered, her calm presence a lifeline in the chaos. Mr. Johnson from across the street crouched down beside Buddy, his hands trembling as he checked for injuries. "Easy boy," he murmured, tears forming in his eyes as he saw the blood pooling on the concrete. Buddy whimpered softly but wagged his tail the moment he sensed Emma nearby, even in her unconscious state. "Calling the police," shouted Mrs. Chin, already holding her phone to her ear. "And animal control. This is unacceptable." Margaret stumbled back toward her perfect lawn, clutching her bloody purse as though it were a shield. "That animal was aggressive," she cried, her voice shrill, desperate. "I was protecting the neighborhood." But her excuses rang hollow. Witnesses had seen everything. Mr. Johnson pointed at his house. "My security cameras recorded the whole thing," he said firmly. "You're not talking your way out of this." Minutes later, the wail of sirens filled the air. Police cars screeched to a halt, followed closely by an ambulance and an animal control van. Paramedics rushed to Emma, checking her pulse and gently lifting her into the ambulance for observation. Another team carefully lifted Buddy onto a stretcher, wrapping his ribs and cleaning the blood from his face. I stood frozen, torn between my child and her dog, my hands trembling, my voice gone. But one thing was clear: Margaret had crossed a line that could never be erased. That night felt endless. The hospital confirmed what I feared: Emma had fainted from the overwhelming trauma, her fragile mind shutting down under the weight of what she'd seen. The doctors reassured me she had no lasting physical damage, but the emotional wounds were another matter entirely. She clung to me when she woke, her first words a broken whisper. "Where's Buddy?" Buddy, meanwhile, was in the care of the emergency veterinarian. His nose was fractured and 2 ribs were cracked, but the vet assured me he would recover with time. Still, seeing him lying there with bandages wrapped around his golden body shattered me. His gentle eyes, always so full of joy, now carried pain and confusion. Back at home, the silence was unbearable. Emma refused to sleep in her room, insisting she stayed beside Buddy's blanket in the living room. She stroked his fur gently, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Why did she hurt him, Mama? He's a good boy." I had no answer. How could I explain cruelty to a child who saw the world through nothing but love? The neighborhood rallied around us. Plates of food arrived at our door, flowers filled the table, and cards piled up with messages of support. For once, it wasn't just sympathy, it was outrage. People were furious at what Margaret had done, but anger couldn't erase the nightmares. Emma woke screaming some nights, convinced Margaret was coming back. Buddy too, startled at sudden noises, sometimes whimpering. In his sleep, we were together, healing side by side. But the shadows of that day lingered, and I knew we would be carrying them for a long time. The investigation moved quickly. Margaret's insistence that she had acted in self-defense crumbled almost immediately under the weight of evidence. Witnesses gave statements, neighbors submitted videos, and the security camera footage from Mr. Johnson's house captured every horrifying second of her attack. There was no room for denial anymore. Within 48 hours, Margaret was arrested. The charges were heavy: animal cruelty, child endangerment, and assault. For a woman who prided herself on status and reputation, the sight of her being handcuffed on her pristine lawn became the ultimate irony. The weeks that followed were consumed with legal proceedings. Emma's therapist strongly advised against her testifying in court, saying it would re-traumatize her. Instead, the prosecution presented a recorded session where Emma explained, in her slow, careful voice, how her best friend Buddy got hurt by the mean lady. Hearing her words in that sterile courtroom brought tears to nearly everyone present, including the judge. I took the stand, describing the attack in excruciating detail. My voice shook, but my anger gave me strength. I wanted the court to understand, not just the physical damage, but the emotional devastation Margaret had caused. Margaret, sitting at the defense table, showed no remorse. She wore expensive suits, whispered furiously with her lawyers, and glared at me as if I were the criminal. Her defense team argued Buddy had been unpredictable and that she feared for her safety. But video evidence told a very different story. A calm, well-trained dog, a terrified child, and a woman consumed by rage. After weeks of testimony, the verdict came down: guilty on all counts. Margaret was sentenced to 6 months in jail, 2 years of probation, and ordered to pay all of Buddy's medical bills along with Emma's therapy costs. She was also permanently removed as HOA president and banned from contacting us again. The courtroom erupted in applause when the sentence was read, but my own feelings were complicated. Justice had been served, yet no prison sentence could erase Emma's nightmares or Buddy's scars. Victory felt hollow, but it was recognition that what she had done was wrong. And for Emma, That mattered. Asterisk, the months after the trial were a blur of slow healing. Buddy's body mended first. With proper care, his ribs knitted, his nose healed, and the swelling faded. But even as his fur shone golden again, there was a change in him. He stayed closer than ever to Emma, his once carefree spirit a little more cautious. Sudden movements made him flinch, and his tail wagged less freely. Yet his devotion never wavered. If anything, it deepened. Emma's healing was slower. Some days she was her old self, laughing when Buddy licked her face or telling me long, meandering stories about her day at school. But other nights, she'd wake up crying, whispering, "Mama, is the mean lady coming back?" It broke my heart each time. I would hold her, reassuring her over and over. Margaret couldn't hurt her, or Buddy, ever again. The neighborhood itself changed, too. People who had once kept to themselves became more protective, kinder. Children stopped to pet Buddy on walks, their parents whispering that he was a hero. Families began checking on each other more often, united by the memory of what had happened, right in the middle of our street. It was as if Margaret's cruelty had awakened a deeper sense of community. Emma, with her boundless heart, surprised me the most. One afternoon, as we walked past Margaret's former house, now sold to a quiet family who planted a garden where her perfect lawn once stood, Emma stopped. She looked at the spot where Buddy had bled, her small face thoughtful. "Mama," she said softly, "I'm not mad at her anymore." I blinked, startled. "You're not?" She shook her head, her eyes wise beyond her years. "Daddy always said that people who are mean are really just sad inside." I think she was very sad. I hope she learns to be happy so she won't hurt anyone else. Her words humbled me. Here was a child who had witnessed cruelty in its raw form, yet she chose forgiveness, not to excuse the act, but to free herself from carrying the weight of hate. Buddy nudged against her legs then, wagging his tail as if he agreed. Maybe dogs understand forgiveness better than we do. The experience left marks on all of us, but not all scars are bad. Emma became stronger, more resilient. She began to see herself not as weak or different, but as someone who had survived something terrible and still chose to love. Buddy, too, carried his scars with grace, becoming a living reminder of courage and loyalty. Together, they taught me something I had never fully understood. Love may not erase pain, but it transforms it, weaving strength out of suffering. That day had almost broken us, but instead, it bound us tighter than ever. Asterisk. Years have passed since that terrible morning, but its memory never truly fades. Emma is older now, no longer the frightened little girl who fainted when her world collapsed. She has grown into a wise, compassionate soul, one who sees strength in kindness and power, in forgiveness. Buddy, though gray around the muzzle and slower on his walks, still sleeps faithfully at her side every night. His scars are nearly invisible now, but the bond he shares with Emma has only deepened. They are two survivors, healing each other in ways that words can't capture. Sometimes people ask if I regret moving into this neighborhood, if I wish we'd lived somewhere else, far from Margaret Wheeler and her cruelty. My answer is always the same: no, because it was here that Emma discovered her strength. It was here that Buddy showed the world what loyalty truly means. And it was here that we learned how communities can rise up when one of their own is attacked. The day Margaret beat Buddy was the darkest of our lives. But from that darkness came lessons I'll carry forever. I learned that love can make you fierce, that even the most vulnerable can inspire courage in others, and that cruelty never wins, not when compassion stands against it. Emma once told me something I'll never forget. "Buddy and I take care of each other. Mama, that's what family does." She was right. Family isn't just about blood, it's about love, loyalty, and standing together when the world tries to tear you apart. And as I watch my daughter and her dog walk hand in hand and paw down the street, I know one thing with certainty: love always wins.